It was supposed to be a calm, ordinary evening. The kitchen smelled of roasted vegetables, and the soft clink of my knife against the cutting board was the only sound in the otherwise quiet room. The evening routine had already set in. Dinner preparation, getting ready for the next day, and waiting for Noah to come home so we could talk about last-minute wedding details. Welcome to StoryVerse, where every story takes you on a deep emotional journey. If you're enjoying this one, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and join our community for more gripping stories about love, betrayal, and redemption. Like, comment, and share your thoughts. Your support helps us bring you more powerful content. Noah's wedding was just around the corner, and as his mother, I had been deeply involved in every step of the process. We had spent months organizing every detail, from choosing the venue to selecting the florist to finalizing the seating arrangements. It felt like the culmination of all our hard work, and I had been there every step of the way. It was supposed to be one of the proudest moments of my life. Seeing my son get married, watching him step into a new chapter of his life, this was what I had worked for. This was what I had helped him prepare for. I was supposed to be there, celebrating with him. But instead, as I stood at the ironing board, carefully smoothing out the wrinkles in Noah's shirt for the rehearsal dinner, everything came to a sudden halt. I had just finished preparing the main course for dinner, and Noah was supposed to arrive soon, after his final meeting with Jasmine and her family. I thought it was going to be another one of those calm, ordinary evenings where we would sit down and talk about what was left to do. Then my phone buzzed. I looked at the screen, expecting a simple message, perhaps a reminder or an update on the wedding schedule. But when I saw the message from Noah, everything inside me froze. "You're not invited to the wedding." At first, I didn't comprehend what I was seeing. I stared at the text, blinking a few times, as if somehow doing so would make it disappear. But no, the words were still there. No explanation, no context, just those words hanging in the air like an unexpected slap. My hands began to shake, and I set the iron down on the board, suddenly aware of how quiet the house was. I could feel my heart racing, my chest tightening. Was this a joke? A misunderstanding? I had been working alongside him for months on this wedding. How could this be happening? I dialed his number immediately, my fingers trembling as I held the phone. I needed to hear his voice. I needed him to explain. But the phone rang, and no one picked up. I tried again. The ringing seemed to grow louder in the silence of the house, and still, no answer. Panic started creeping in as I pressed the phone to my ear. Nothing. That was when the second message came through. "It's Jasmine's day. We've decided, not just he, but we." My vision blurred for a moment, and I had to take a few deep breaths to steady myself. I let the phone slip from my hand onto the kitchen counter. My legs felt weak, like they might give out beneath me. What was happening? Why was he doing this? Why was I being excluded from his wedding? I had always been there for him. Since the day he was born, I had dedicated my life to being his support system. I sacrificed my career for him. I worked multiple jobs to make sure he had everything he needed. I spent sleepless nights helping him with homework, attending every parent-teacher conference, and making sure his life was as good as I could make it. And now this? Now I was being told I wasn't welcome at the biggest day of his life? For a long time, I just sat there in the quiet, trying to make sense of what had happened. The hurt, the confusion, the betrayal, they all mingled together in my chest, leaving me feeling hollow and numb. I had no idea how to process this. How could he not want me there? How could he erase me from such an important day? All I had done for him, all I had given, all the years I spent trying to make his life easier, how could that mean nothing now? As the minutes ticked by, I stood up and paced around the kitchen. I kept checking my phone, hoping for some kind of explanation, some kind of justification. But there was nothing. I dialed Olivia's number. She was always there for me, and I needed to talk to her. I needed to make sense of this. When Olivia answered, I could hear the concern in her voice immediately. "Mom, what's wrong? Are you okay?" she asked. I barely recognized my own voice as I explained what had happened. The words tumbled out, one after another. He sent me a text. "I'm not invited to the wedding. He said it was Jasmine's day, and they decided I'm not welcome. Olivia was silent for a moment. I could hear her taking in what I had just said. What do you mean, not invited? Did you talk to him? I've tried, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He's not answering. I don't understand this, Olivia. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why he's doing this. I'm so sorry, Mom, Olivia said softly. This doesn't sound like Noah. You've always been there for him. I don't know what happened, but he's really struggling. I think he doesn't know how to handle all this. But he loves you. I know he does. I felt a small sense of comfort hearing Olivia's words, but it didn't change the fact that I was excluded from my son's wedding. I had been his rock, his support, his biggest cheerleader, and now I was nothing more than an afterthought. I need to go, Olivia, I said, wiping my eyes. I need to think. I can't just sit here and let this happen. You're going to figure this out, Mom, she said. You'll work it out with him. You're his mother. You have to talk to him. But I wasn't sure if that was possible anymore. The room was quiet again. The only sound was the low hum of the refrigerator in the background, a constant reminder that life, even when it hurts, continues. I was still sitting at the kitchen table, staring at my phone, hoping for some kind of message from Noah, something that could explain why everything had turned upside down. But there was nothing. The words, "You're not invited to the wedding," kept repeating in my mind like an echo, each repetition cutting deeper into me. My mind started to wander, and before I could stop myself, memories of the past came rushing back, unbidden and overwhelming. It was like opening a floodgate I had kept shut for so long. I closed my eyes for a moment, and in the stillness of the house I was transported back in time. I remembered when Noah was just a boy. I remembered the early mornings when he was small, the way he clung to me as I tried to get him ready for school. I could still hear his little voice calling for me from his room, asking me to make his favorite pancakes before we left for school. And I did, every single day. It wasn't just the pancakes. It was everything, every small detail. I'd always put him first. Always. When he was in high school, I remember the days when he came home late, his face flushed from the excitement of a soccer game or a school dance. I was there for every single moment. I stayed up late helping him with his homework, making sure he had everything he needed for his tests and assignments. The late nights felt endless, but I didn't mind. I wanted him to succeed. I wanted him to feel supported, to feel like he could achieve anything. But I wasn't just the one who stayed up late. I worked long hours too. Sometimes I would take on double shifts to make sure that we could make ends meet. I didn't mind that either. I did it because I loved him. I did it because I wanted to give him everything I never had. There were times when I would look at the clock and realize it was past midnight and I hadn't even eaten dinner yet. But Noah would be in his room studying, and I would just smile to myself, knowing that my sacrifices were worth it. They were worth it because I wanted him to have the best opportunities in life. I wanted him to be able to go to college, to build a future where he wouldn't have to struggle like I did. The memory shifted, and suddenly I was looking at myself in the mirror. But this time I was older. My face was lined with fatigue, the exhaustion of working multiple jobs taking its toll. I had put my career aspirations on hold to make sure that Noah could go to the school of his choice. I sold my engagement ring to help pay for his tuition. I had to swallow my pride and ask for financial aid because we just couldn't afford it otherwise. But I didn't care. I'd do anything for him. He was my world, and seeing him go off to college was the proudest moment of my life. I remember the day he graduated, the sense of accomplishment filling my chest. I had missed so much in my own life, but it didn't matter, because he was going to make it, and that was enough for me. Watching him walk across that stage, knowing how hard he had worked, made every sacrifice feel worthwhile. But that day, I also felt something else, a strange emptiness. It wasn't about him, it was about me. I had given everything to him, and I had nothing left for myself. But I didn't mind. I wouldn't change a thing, not for the world. As the flashbacks continued, I thought about the first time Noah moved into his own apartment. I remember being so proud of him, watching him make a home for himself. But I also remember the loneliness I felt in the empty house after he moved out. It was supposed to be a moment of joy, a moment to celebrate his independence. But all I could feel was the void. I had been so consumed with making sure he had everything he needed, with making sure he was okay, that I had forgotten about myself. I had forgotten that I was allowed to have dreams too, and yet I never resented him for it. I never blamed him. He had been my reason for everything. I had poured my life into him, and I was happy to do it. But now here I was, excluded from his wedding, the one moment where I should have been able to see him take the next step in his life, and it felt like all those years of sacrifice meant nothing. How could he do this to me? How could he push me aside after all I had done for him? The memories kept coming, one after another, each one heavier than the last. I sat there, in the silence of my kitchen, feeling the weight of the years of sacrifice that had led me here. I had spent so much of my life giving, giving, and giving. But in return, what had I gotten? A text message. You're not invited to the wedding. The anger started to build in me, slow at first, like a trickle of water filling a dam. But as I sat there stewing in my thoughts, the rage began to rise. How could he? How could Noah, the boy I had given everything for, treat me like this? I had been there for him when no one else was. I had worked to make sure he had a future, a life beyond what I had been able to give him. And now I was nothing. I wasn't even invited to his wedding. I wanted to scream. I wanted to demand answers. But there was nothing I could do. The text was clear. The decision had been made, and I was no longer a part of it. I stood up, pacing back and forth in the kitchen, my mind racing. I needed to get out. I needed to do something. I couldn't just sit here and let him treat me like this. I had been his rock, his foundation, and now he had thrown me away like I was nothing. I grabbed my phone and started typing, but before I could send a single word, I stopped. What was the point? What was I going to say? Why did you do this? Why am I not enough? No, it wasn't worth it. I put the phone down and grabbed my jacket. I needed to leave. I needed to get away from all of this. I couldn't keep living in this suffocating feeling of rejection. The plane ride to Maui was longer than I anticipated. Time seemed to stretch on as I stared out the window, the clouds swirling beneath us like a sea of white cotton. I had no idea what I was looking for when I booked the flight. Escape? Peace? Or maybe, just maybe, I was hoping that somewhere between the hustle of everyday life and the pain of my son's rejection, I could find a way to heal. Maui wasn't a place I had ever thought I'd visit. It wasn't on my list of dream destinations, nor did I have any great personal connection to it. But when I looked at flight options and saw it listed, I knew deep down that it was where I needed to go. The island promised solitude, distance from the reality I had been living, and more importantly, it promised space to breathe. When I arrived, the air was thick with warmth, a kind of tropical embrace that immediately felt like a contrast to the coldness I had been carrying in my chest for days. I stepped outside the airport, breathing in the sweet, salty air. The sun was high in the sky, casting its golden rays across the landscape, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt the tension in my shoulders begin to loosen. I rented a small, modest cabin near the beach. Nothing extravagant, just a cozy space that overlooked the ocean. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore was constant, and I immediately realized how much I had missed silence. The world had been so loud for so long, with constant demands, expectations, and emotions swirling around me. Here there was nothing but the rhythmic pulse of the sea and the gentle breeze moving through the trees. The first evening, I walked along the beach, feeling the cool sand between my toes. The vastness of the ocean stretched out before me, endless and serene. I let the beauty of the landscape wash over me, but the pain was still there, lurking beneath the calm surface. I had hoped that the ocean would somehow cleanse me, but it didn't. It didn't take away the sting of Noah's words, the coldness of his rejection, or the confusion that had been haunting me ever since. I sat down on the sand and looked out at the horizon. I could see the sun beginning to dip below the water, painting the sky with brilliant hues of orange, pink, and purple. It was breathtaking. Yet even as I tried to absorb the beauty of it all, the emptiness in my chest lingered. I realized I wasn't just here to escape. I was here to find answers. Answers to questions I hadn't even allowed myself to ask before. Why did he do this? Why had Noah, my son, chosen this moment to push me away? The quiet reflection. The days that followed were filled with quiet reflection. I spent most of my time walking along the beach, reading books I hadn't touched in years, and simply being. Being without the weight of my obligations. Being without the constant worry about Noah, about my family. It was both freeing and unsettling. I didn't know who I was without the role I had always played in my family's life. I hadn't realized how much of myself I had given up over the years. My dreams, my passions, the things I had put on hold for the sake of my children. I had spent decades as their caretaker, their protector, their support. I had given so much of myself that I had forgotten to nurture the parts of me that weren't just about them. One afternoon, I decided to take a break from the beach and explore the island. I rented a car and drove along the winding roads, stopping at small towns and hidden spots along the way. There was something comforting about the isolation, the quiet places that seemed to mirror what I was feeling inside. In those moments, I didn't have to explain myself to anyone. I didn't have to answer questions or justify my actions. I could just be. But as the days went on, the questions that had been swirling in my head became more urgent. I couldn't keep avoiding them. I had to face them, just like I had to face Noah when I returned. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't just about his wedding. It was about a deeper issue, something that had been festering for years, but that I had never fully acknowledged. The first phone call. On the fifth day, my phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "Mom, are you okay? Noah's trying to reach you. He's really sorry for what happened." I stared at the message for a while, unsure of how to respond. I had told Olivia I needed time, and I wasn't sure I was ready to talk to Noah. I had been avoiding him, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to open that door just yet. But Olivia's message nagged at me, and I knew I couldn't stay in this emotional limbo forever. I had to face it. So I called her back. "I'm okay, Olivia," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. "I just need space. I can't deal with Noah right now." "I understand, Mom," she said gently. "But Noah's really sorry. He feels terrible about what happened. He's been trying to call you, but I think he's scared." "Scared?" I repeated. "Scared of what?" "Scared of losing you, Mom. He doesn't know how to fix this." I sat down on the couch, staring out the window at the ocean. The waves seemed to move at a slow, constant rhythm, and I felt that rhythm deep in my chest. The steady ebb and flow reminded me that things don't stay still forever. They move, they change, they evolve. "I don't know what to do anymore, Olivia," I confessed, my voice breaking. "I've given so much of myself, and now this. I don't know how to move forward." "You'll figure it out, Mom," she said softly. "But Noah really does need you. He made a mistake. He doesn't know how to fix it, but he's trying. He's really sorry." The struggle within. I put my phone down, my mind swirling with thoughts. Olivia was right. Noah had made a mistake, but I didn't know how to get past it. I didn't know how to move forward. The betrayal I felt was still so raw. I wasn't sure if I could ever look at Noah the same way again. But deep down, I knew that I couldn't let this define our relationship. I had to decide if I could forgive him. I had to decide if I could move past the hurt. But that decision wasn't easy. It wasn't just about Noah. It was about me, about my own needs, my own feelings. For so long, I had put everyone else first. I had neglected myself, my dreams, my happiness. I had forgotten that I deserved to be heard, to be seen, to be valued. Part 5. The Call from Noah. 2 days later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from Noah. I had been expecting it, but that didn't make it any easier. My heart pounded as I stared at the screen. I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear from him. I let it ring a few times before finally answering. "Mom," he said softly, his voice filled with regret. "I'm sorry. I should have called you sooner. I've been thinking about everything, and I can't believe I let it get this far." I closed my eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. I wasn't sure what to say. "Noah, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you talk to me first?" "I don't know, Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I was trying to please everyone. I didn't want to disappoint anyone. And when Jasmine, I just got caught up in it all. I should have thought about you. I should have thought about how this would hurt you. I'm so sorry. I felt a lump form in my throat as I listened to him. He wasn't just apologizing for the wedding incident. He was apologizing for everything. The years of taking me for granted, the years of not seeing how much I had sacrificed for him. The apology was long overdue, but hearing it still made me question everything. Part 6. The Apology. The days following Noah's call were filled with uncertainty. I spent my time walking along the beach, trying to clear my mind, but I couldn't stop thinking about what he had said. His apology, though sincere, hadn't erased the hurt I felt. I still couldn't comprehend how everything had gone wrong so quickly. I had been there for Noah every step of the way, through thick and thin. I had poured my heart and soul into raising him, supporting him, and ensuring that he never had to worry about anything. But now, after all of that, I was left with nothing but a simple text message telling me I wasn't welcome at his wedding. I sat in my small cabin in Maui, the soft hum of the waves lulling me into a state of contemplation. Why was I still so angry? Why was I still so hurt? It wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was about everything, the years of sacrifice, the endless giving, the emotional investment, and the feeling of being discarded, of being told I was no longer needed or wanted. But as the days passed, I started to realize that this wasn't just about me. It was about Noah too, and about the way he had been navigating his own life. Maybe, just maybe, he had made these choices because he didn't know how to handle everything that was being thrown at him. The call I never expected. I was sitting on the balcony of the cabin one evening, watching the sun set over the ocean, when my phone buzzed again. My heart skipped a beat as I saw Noah's name on the screen. I wasn't sure if I was ready for this call, but I answered it anyway. "Mom," Noah said, his voice tentative, as if unsure how to approach the conversation. "I know it's been a while, and I don't know where to start, but I'm sorry. I should have done this sooner. I've been thinking about everything, and I can't believe I let it get this far." I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to steady my breath. I had been waiting for this moment, but now that it was here, I wasn't sure how to respond. "Noah," I said, my voice trembling, "I don't know if I can just forgive you right away. This, this hurts more than you can imagine. I gave everything for you, and now I'm just cast aside. How could you do this?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear Noah breathing deeply, as if trying to find the right words. "I know, Mom," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. I know I messed up. I let you down. I took you for granted, and I never meant to. But I've been thinking about it, and I realize now how much I hurt you. I was so caught up in trying to please everyone, in trying to make everything perfect for Jasmine, that I didn't see how much I was hurting you. And I'm sorry for that." I felt a lump in my throat. This wasn't the Noah I knew. The Noah I had raised had always been so focused on doing the right thing. But now I could hear the remorse in his voice, and it hit me in a way I wasn't expecting. "But why, Noah? Why didn't you just talk to me?" I asked. "You could have told me how you were feeling. I was here for you, always. I would have understood. I would have helped. But instead, you shut me out. You let Jasmine make this decision for both of you. And now I don't even know where I stand in your life anymore." Noah paused, and I could hear the regret in his voice when he spoke again. "I don't know what happened, Mom. I didn't mean to push you away. It just happened. I thought I could handle everything, and I thought keeping things from you would make it easier. But I was wrong. I hurt you, and I can never take that back." The weight of his words. His apology wasn't easy to accept. It was raw, and it came from a place of real self-reflection. But as much as I wanted to forgive him, there was still a part of me that held back. The betrayal I felt from his decision to exclude me from his wedding was too deep. How could I just let go of all that? How could I let go of the years of sacrifice, of everything I had done for him? But as I listened to his words, I realized that he was genuinely remorseful. He wasn't just apologizing to fix things. He was apologizing because he truly understood the pain he had caused. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away, Mom," he said, his voice steady now. "I know I don't deserve it. But I want to prove to you that I can be the son you deserve. I want to rebuild our relationship. I want you to know that I'm sorry for everything, and I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. I felt my heart soften, just a little. I wasn't ready to forgive him, not yet, but I could hear the sincerity in his voice. He wasn't asking me to forget. He wasn't asking me to just let it go. He was asking me to give him a chance to make things right, a slow path toward healing. We talked for a while longer, and after hanging up, I sat in the quiet of my cabin, reflecting on everything. I had been so consumed by the hurt and the anger that I hadn't given myself the chance to process what Noah had said. His apology was just the first step in a long journey. I knew that, but it was a step, and it was more than I had gotten from him in a long time. The days after that phone call were filled with moments of introspection. I knew I had to let go of the past. I had to move forward, not just for Noah, but for myself. The years of giving, the years of self-sacrifice had taken their toll. But I couldn't keep holding on to that hurt. It wasn't doing me any good. The healing process wasn't going to be quick. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was something I needed to do for myself. I had spent so much time living for others, I had forgotten what it was like to live for me. I had forgotten that I deserved to be happy too. The weeks following Noah's apology were filled with mixed emotions. I could feel the hurt slowly beginning to subside, but the pain didn't vanish overnight. It was like a wound that had been left untreated for so long. It still throbbed with each step I took. But I was ready to heal. I had to be, for myself. I woke up each day with the intention of moving forward, even if I didn't fully know how. I started small. I spent more time outside, walking along the beach, letting the fresh air fill my lungs. I reconnected with parts of myself that I had neglected for years. I joined a local yoga class. I made a habit of reading at night before bed, something I hadn't done in ages. It was like I was rediscovering who I was outside of being a mother. I was rediscovering my own identity, something I had put on hold for so long in favor of making everyone else's life better. But despite my growing sense of independence, Noah's words stayed with me. I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened, the betrayal, the hurt, the way he had excluded me from such an important day. There were moments when I would find myself lost in thought, replaying the wedding, imagining the empty space where I should have been. Yet as the days went by, something changed. The anger I felt wasn't as intense as it once was. I began to see Noah through a different lens. Yes, he had hurt me, but he was also the same person I had raised, the person I loved unconditionally. He wasn't perfect, but neither was I. We were both flawed, and in that imperfection, there was an opportunity to grow together. The first conversation after the apology. One evening, I decided it was time to call Noah. I had been avoiding him, not out of anger, but because I needed to process everything. I wasn't ready to jump back into a relationship with him as if nothing had happened. But I also knew that I couldn't keep avoiding the issue forever. So I picked up the phone and dialed his number. It rang twice before he picked up. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice sounding uncertain, but with a hint of hopefulness. "I was wondering when you'd call." I paused for a moment, unsure of what to say. What did I want from this conversation? What did I need to hear? "I've been thinking about everything," I said, my voice steady but quiet. "About what happened, and about where we go from here." Noah sighed. "I know. I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't handle it well. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I hurt you, and I can never take that back. But I'm here. I want to make things right." "You've already said that, Noah," I replied. "I appreciate the apology, but it's not just about saying the words. It's about what comes next. And for me, what comes next is figuring out if I can trust you again, if we can rebuild this." There was silence on the other end of the line, and I could hear him taking a deep breath. "I get it," he said quietly. "I know I've hurt you, and I don't expect everything to be fixed right away. But I'm willing to try. I want to show you that I can be the son you deserve. I want to rebuild our relationship, even if it takes time." For the first time in a long time, I felt like Noah wasn't just asking for forgiveness. He was asking for a chance to prove himself, and that in itself meant something. It wasn't easy to forgive, but I realized that maybe I could start taking small steps forward too. The first step forward. A week later, Noah invited me to dinner. It wasn't a grand gesture, but something about the simplicity of it felt right. The thought of sitting across from him, having a meal and talking like we used to, seemed like a step in the right direction. I agreed, but I told him we needed to take it slow. I wasn't ready to dive back into the past, and I wasn't sure what our future looked like. But dinner was a small start. We met at a cozy restaurant in the city. It was quiet, intimate, just the two of us. I could tell Noah was nervous, and for the first time in a long time, I realized I was nervous too. It was strange sitting there with him. After all that had happened, the silence between us felt louder than the conversations we had shared in the past. "I'm glad you came," Noah said after a few moments of silence. "I know it's been tough, and I know you're still hurt. But I want you to know that I'm really trying here, Mom. I'm doing the best I can." I looked at him, studying his face, trying to see the sincerity in his eyes. "I know you are, Noah," I said, my voice softening. "But I can't just forget what happened. I can't pretend like everything is fine. We need to rebuild this slowly." "I understand," he replied. "I'm okay with that. I just want you to know that I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." The rest of the dinner was filled with tentative conversation. Talk about work, old memories, what had been happening in our lives since everything fell apart. It wasn't the easy, comfortable conversation we used to have. There was an undercurrent of tension, of things unsaid, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't as awkward as I thought it would be. As we finished our meal and prepared to leave, Noah hugged me. It was a simple hug, but it was full of meaning. It was full of everything we had been through, everything that had brought us to this moment. It was full of the hope that maybe, just maybe, we could start to rebuild. "I love you, Mom," he whispered as he pulled away. "I love you too," I replied. And for the first time in months, I felt the stirrings of something deep inside me. Hope. Hope that we could heal. Hope that we could rebuild. Hope that, despite everything, we were both willing to try. The days seemed to pass slower now, like the world was moving at a different pace, one that allowed me to reflect and breathe. Noah and I were still walking a tightrope, unsure of how to proceed, but the tension in the air was beginning to ease. Each time we met, I could see that he was trying, really trying, to make things right. But I knew that this wasn't something that could be fixed overnight. It would take time. It would take patience. It would take both of us working at it. We met regularly now, every week for coffee or dinner, talking about everything from work to old memories. But there were always the unspoken things that hovered between us. The hurt, the betrayal, the years of sacrifices that I had made. These things still felt unresolved. I wasn't sure how to bridge the gap, how to move beyond the emotional chasm that had opened up between us. One evening, after a quiet dinner at a small cafe in town, we sat in the parking lot, the car engine off, neither of us ready to end the conversation. "You know," Noah said, his voice low, "I've been thinking about everything that led up to the wedding, and I've been thinking about you, about how much you've done for me, for this family. I never stopped to realize what it must have cost you, emotionally and physically, to do everything you did. You were always the one who gave. You were always the one who showed up, no matter what." I didn't know how to respond. The words were kind, and they touched me. But they didn't erase the fact that he had made me feel invisible, irrelevant, in the one moment that should have been about us, the wedding. "I gave because I loved you, Noah," I said quietly, my voice thick with emotion. "But I'm learning that I've lost parts of myself in doing so. I've been so focused on making sure everyone else is okay that I forgot to check in with myself." Noah nodded, the weight of my words sinking in. His eyes softened, but I could see the conflict within him. He wasn't just apologizing for what happened at the wedding. He was apologizing for not noticing how much I had sacrificed over the years. He was seeing me in a way he never had before, and that hurt and healed me in equal measure. "I never meant to make you feel that way, Mom," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was so wrapped up in my own world that I didn't realize the price you were paying." "I'm sorry." "I know you're sorry, Noah," I replied, trying to keep the emotion in check. "But it's not just about the apology. It's about understanding. It's about showing me that you get it. and I need time to see if that's even possible. The weeks that followed were a mixture of progress and setbacks. Every time I thought we were moving forward, something would happen that would make me question everything. There were days when I was so angry, I couldn't even look at Noah without feeling a surge of resentment. And then there were days when I felt a little more at ease, when we would laugh together like we used to, and I could almost forget about everything that had happened. I began to see that Noah was genuinely trying. He wasn't just apologizing, he was making small, consistent efforts to show me that he cared. He'd text me to check in, asking how my day was going. He'd call just to talk, not about the wedding or the past, but about his life, his work, his friends. It felt like he was trying to rebuild our connection, piece by piece. But with each effort, I felt my walls slowly coming down. I wasn't sure I was ready to forgive him, but I was starting to see him differently. I wasn't just seeing the son who had hurt me, the son who had excluded me from his wedding. I was seeing the man he had become, a man who was flawed, yes, but who was also capable of change. And that realization gave me a glimmer of hope. But even as Noah made these efforts, I struggled internally. I had spent so many years identifying myself as a mother, a caretaker, someone who gave everything for others. I had sacrificed so much, my time, my career, my happiness, and I had never once asked for anything in return. It was hard to let go of that identity, hard to accept that I was allowed to want things for myself. I found myself questioning my own worth. Had I made the right choice in how I had raised Noah? Had I done too much for him? And in doing so, had I lost myself? Was I allowed to be angry, to feel betrayed after all the love I had given? These questions swirled in my mind like a storm, each one more difficult to answer than the last. I felt torn between my love for Noah and the anger I still carried. I knew I had to forgive him, but was I ready? Was I strong enough to move past the hurt? I realized that in order to move forward, I had to stop looking for answers to these questions. I had to stop trying to figure everything out. I had to let go of the need to control the narrative, to make sense of every detail. Instead, I needed to focus on what comes next, what we could build from this point forward, not what had been lost. One weekend, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I took a solo trip to a small, quiet town just outside of Maui. It wasn't far from the island, but it felt like another world. The town was peaceful, the air fresh, and the slow pace of life allowed me to finally breathe deeply, without the constant rush of responsibilities. I stayed in a small bed and breakfast, a cozy place that overlooked a garden filled with wildflowers. I spent my days walking around the town, visiting local shops, and just being. It was the first time in a long time that I wasn't taking care of anyone else, that I wasn't putting someone's needs before my own. It was just me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could hear my own thoughts again. I realized how much I had been drowning in the needs of others, especially Noah's. It wasn't that I didn't love him. I did, more than anything. But I had lost myself along the way. I had given so much of myself to him, to the family, that I had forgotten what it was like to live for me. As I sat in the garden one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant shades of pink and orange, I made a promise to myself. I would no longer sacrifice my happiness for the sake of others. I would start taking care of myself, putting my own needs first. It wasn't selfish. It was necessary. And I realized that I needed to show Noah that too. That in order for our relationship to truly heal, I had to find a balance between being his mother and being me. The day had finally arrived. The wedding I had helped plan, the wedding I had dreamed of attending with pride, was now here. But it didn't feel like the day I had imagined. It didn't feel like the culmination of everything I had given, everything I had sacrificed for my son. It felt like an ending, a symbol of everything that had gone wrong, a reminder of the chasm that had opened between us. I had spent the morning getting ready, but the preparation felt like an afterthought. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my dress, trying to make myself look presentable. But every movement felt heavy, each second dragging on. The excitement that should have been there, the joy, the anticipation, none of it was present. Instead, all I could feel was the weight of the situation. Noah had invited me, yes, but his invitation felt different now. It wasn't a gesture of warmth. It was more like a formal acknowledgement of my presence, as if I were a guest, not a mother. I was an outsider at my own son's wedding, and the realization hit me every time I glanced at the invitation on the counter, sitting there like a cruel reminder of what had transpired. I stood there staring at the reflection in the mirror, asking myself if I was doing the right thing. Should I even go? Part of me still wanted to walk away, to avoid the pain, to avoid seeing Noah and Jasmine exchange vows while I stood there, disconnected from it all. But another part of me, the part that still loved him unconditionally, knew that I had to be there. I had to show up for him, despite everything. Preparing to leave, I grabbed my purse and took a deep breath. My emotions were a mix of anxiety, dread, and a flicker of hope. I didn't know what would happen at the wedding. I didn't know if I would be able to control my emotions or if I would be able to hold it together long enough to make it through. As I walked to my car, my heart felt heavy. I had been through so much to get to this point. I had tried to move past the hurt, to move past the pain of being excluded from his big day, but I knew that showing up was an important step. For me, for Noah. It was about healing, about trying to rebuild a relationship that had been torn apart by misunderstandings, assumptions, and poor choices. I arrived at the venue early, before the guests had begun to arrive. The sun was shining brightly, and the lush greenery of the garden made the place look like something out of a fairy tale. Everything was beautiful, perfect, as it should be for Noah's wedding. But as I stood there, the feeling of emptiness still lingered. I could see the joy in the air, the excitement, but all I felt was the weight of my own heartache. Walking into the ceremony. When the ceremony began, I took my seat at the back, far from the front row, where I had always imagined sitting, where I had imagined being, proudly watching my son take this huge step in his life. Instead, I was relegated to the back, a silent observer, not allowed to fully participate in the celebration of the man he had become. I looked around at the people seated near me, some familiar faces, others strangers. They all looked so happy for Noah and Jasmine, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I didn't belong here. As the music began and the guests stood, I found myself holding my breath. Noah stood at the altar, looking dashing in his suit. He looked so handsome, so grown up, but there was something missing, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. It wasn't just the physical distance between us. It was the emotional divide that had been created between us. And no matter how hard I tried to push it away, it kept creeping back into my thoughts. As Jasmine walked down the aisle, her eyes locked with Noah's. I saw the love and devotion in his gaze, and it broke me. It broke me because I knew, deep down, that he was happy. But I also knew that he wasn't truly seeing me anymore. Not in the way that he used to. The ceremony unfolded in slow motion, as if time had stretched out to make me feel every moment more intensely. The vows were exchanged. Noah spoke with such tenderness, such conviction, but my heart felt like it was being slowly crushed. He was moving on, starting a new life, and I wasn't a part of it anymore. Not in the way I had hoped to be. I was still his mother, of course. I always would be. But today I felt like a stranger. I felt like an outsider looking in. The moment of truth. The reception was a blur. I sat at a table near the back, away from most of the other guests, watching as Noah and Jasmine danced their first dance. The joy in their eyes was evident, and part of me wanted to feel happy for them. But another part of me couldn't shake the feeling of being left behind. I wanted to be happy for them. I wanted to smile and cheer and laugh along with everyone else. But it was hard. It was hard to let go of the pain. As the evening wore on, the music played, and the laughter filled the air. I found myself watching Noah from afar. I saw the man he had become, the man I had raised, the man I had given everything for. And I realized something. This wasn't about me anymore. This was his moment. This was his new life. And I had to let him go. But it was also about me. It was about finding peace with what had happened, finding peace with the choices I had made, and understanding that sometimes love means letting go. I had to let him go. He wasn't my little boy anymore. He was a grown man, making his own decisions. A quiet departure. As the night came to a close, I quietly stood up and made my way to the exit. I didn't want to draw attention to myself. I didn't want anyone to feel sorry for me. I just needed to leave. I needed to process everything that had happened, and I needed to do it on my own. When I stepped outside into the cool night air, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The hurt was still there, but so was something else. Relief. I had shown up. I had been present for him, even if it wasn't in the way I had hoped. And in that moment, I knew that this was the beginning of something new for both of us. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew that I had to focus on healing, not just for Noah, but for me. I had spent so long giving, so long sacrificing, that I had lost sight of who I was. It was time to rediscover myself, to rebuild my life, and to find peace with the past. After the wedding, I felt a sense of closure, but it wasn't the end of our journey. Noah and I still had work to do, and there were still some lingering feelings of hurt, but I knew that we were moving in the right direction. The road to rebuilding trust would take time, and it wouldn't always be easy. But we were committed to each other. We were committed to moving forward, one step at a time. As I stood at the wedding reception, watching Noah and Jasmine share their first dance, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. This wasn't the perfect ending I had imagined, but it was real. It was honest. And in the end, that was enough. I had learned that love isn't just about sacrifice, it's about respect, communication, and understanding. I had learned to put myself first, and in doing so, I had learned how to rebuild my relationship with my son. This wasn't the end of our story. It was just the beginning. As I stood at the wedding reception, watching Noah and Jasmine share their first dance, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. This wasn't the perfect ending I had imagined, but it was real. It was honest. And in the end, that was enough. I had learned that love isn't just about sacrifice, it's about respect, communication, and understanding. I had learned to put myself first, and in doing so, I had learned how to rebuild my relationship with my son. This wasn't the end of our story, it was just the beginning.